in language, there is something we call presuppositions. These are different to the presuppositions of NLP. So the presuppositions of language are what must be true in the sentence that a person uses with the words. I don't know, it's in the language section. 55. So on page 55, linguistic presuppositions. So these are, they're not language patterns, they're just things to be aware of that we can extract from language. So a linguistic presupposition is something that must be true for a sentence to make sense. So the first one is existence. So that presupposition is all about if a person gives you a sentence or a phrase, what must be true for that phrase to be true. So if I said to you, my wife and I, 3 words, my wife and I, what is presupposed?
Married.
And if I'm married, what must be true?
To a woman?
Not necessarily, but
You have to have a wife.
well, not necessarily, not to be married.
Yeah, you do.
Do you?
Yeah.
Do you have to have a wife?
Or that's being called a partnership. Yeah.
All right. So yeah, okay. We'll stick with that then. Wife. Yeah. My wife. My wife. Yeah. Yeah. Up north. Yeah. Yeah. So my wife and I must have a wife. Yeah. So there must be somebody in the world, in the category of females. There must be one person who is my wife and I. So what else must be true, but I've not stated it?
You had a wedding.
There was a wedding or a ceremony that before the ceremony there was a person who wasn't my wife, and then something happened, and then she was. So there must be a period of time where a process happened. Yeah? What else must be true? That's another thing. There must have been a time.
But you're still together?
From that, my wife and I,
Give it to the ex-wife.
well actually, if I said my wife and I,
I'll separate him.
Oh, it depends.
well no, my wife and I, that statement, it would infer that we are still married. Yeah? But I've not stated it. What else?
Both over the age of 16.
Both over the age of 16, yeah. What
Your
else?
wife has got a husband.
Very good, yeah, yeah. So in that short statement, there's a whole host of things that must be true. There must have been another person who went through that. I must have signed something. There must have been a pen. Somebody must have either purchased the pen or taken the pen. There must have been a temperature in the room. A whole host of things are presupposed and accepted, not challenged, just in those 3 words. Does that make sense? So if I said to you the 4 words, sorry. Thank you very much, Misha. My wife and very good, yeah. The chair was at the front of the room. What must exist?
The back of the room.
There's a back of the room as well.
There's a chair, there's a room.
There's a chair.
Floor.
A floor, yeah. What else? There must be a left and a right. What else? Walls. Ceiling, you could argue not, because you could have a room without a ceiling.
Could you?
I don't know. Could you? I don't know.
Yes, in Italy you can.
Can you? Yeah, yeah, yeah. So in Italy, different rules, yeah.
Someone put a chair there.
Yeah, you could argue that somebody put the chair there. If I said the chair walked to the back of the room, could we accept that? Why not? Yes, they do.
You could be watching a Disney movie.
No. If I said the chair walked to the back of the room, that's acceptable.
A chairperson.
A chairperson, yeah. So there's ambiguity, scope ambiguity on the chairperson, yeah. So language and presuppositions, as a hypnotist, as a coach, as an NLP practitioner, you can tailor your language to have presuppositions embedded in it that would be useful for the person to accept without knowing that they've accepted. So that's existence. Possibility, again, this is where you would use modal operators in a sentence, and it presupposes that something is possible.
Bless you.
You can sneeze again if you wish. There's a-
Thank you.
sorry.
Sorry, is it-
Presupposes that she can sneeze again. We obviously know what a cause effect and a complex equivalence is. This would also be inferred in a sentence or a phrase. Awareness, this is where in the sentence a person is making reference to feelings. I felt a chill just as I went outside. There's a presupposition of awareness there because there's a sensation that they're using. Time, when I was a little kid, my mum used to say, you know, John, so when I was a little kid, there's a presupposition that time's involved in this phrase, this string of words. Adverb, adjective, this is where we are using ly on the end, quickly, swiftly, or we're describing something. That is also a presupposition of language. We've talked about exclusive or inclusive or. Do we go to the pub, then the pictures? Or what do you want to do first? Go to the pub and the pictures. One will be exclusive with either doing this or this. Inclusive would be it's inclusive, it's not exclusive. Ordinal, first thing that we're going to do this morning would presuppose there's going to be another thing. The second thing that Troy said to me when I met him, there's a presupposition there that there is some kind of order. There was a second, there was a first. So these presuppositions are very useful to be aware of when we're listening and understanding a client, and also in the stories that we may tell with an intention for a client. If you're coaching somebody to build a story or a dialogue or a session around presuppositions of your language, you can say certain things, and embedded in there will be lots of good suggestions that they would accept by not challenging the language that you're using. So we've got presuppositions which we'll make reference to as we go on. When a person comes and tells you their story, you could ask a random question, but there would be some kind of search there. That can interrupt their pattern sometimes because they have to go somewhere else. So if they're stuck in a state talking about the teacher at school, if you said, how hot was the room? Or how tight were your shoes? It presupposes yet that there was a temperature in the room, that they did have some shoes on. Their focus of attention would have to go somewhere other than where they are now. Does that make sense? So there's multiple ways that being aware of presuppositions can be useful.